my name is Ashlee Haze, and welcome to the Modern Philosophy Podcast. I am so excited about our guest today. In the studio, we have none other than Miguel Santiago. I'm going to introduce you all to Miguel since you may not know him yet. Miguel Santiago is a higher education professional, musician, and community advocate hailing from Stone Mountain, Georgia. Miguel has dedicated the last decade of his career towards improving college access and educational achievement for Black and Latinx youth throughout the nation. He has worked for several top-ranked universities, including Clark, Harvard, Hampshire, Stanford, etc., and he has served as president of a college access nonprofit, NECBAC, that works with low-income first-generation youth across the Northeast. He was also a founding member of the Stone Mountain Action Coalition and spent several years implementing literacy programs for underserved youth across Atlanta. In his spare time, Miguel enjoys playing harmonica, exploring nature, and hitting up record stores. Miguel earned his bachelor's degree in English literature and education at Oglethorpe University. That's up the street and around the corner. And recently, his master's in educational policy at Harvard University. So not only is Miguel super talented, but also super smart. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Miguel.
Thank you for having me. It is definitely an honor to be here in this space. And I know you share the space with a lot of accomplished and impactful people. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and here's another accomplished and impactful person. We're going to talk a lot more about what you do both creatively and getting access to students to college. But first, I'm very interested in your love for records. So you actually brought me a record, which I'm so excited. I'm so excited about.
Absolutely.
Y'all know who that is? That's Missy. That's Missy Elliott on the cover. So talk to me about this record.
Yes, it is Missy Elliott as a part of a group, Sister. That was an R&B hip-hop group that she was a part of. And this record just has a great story, but even how I found the record is a great story because I have such a passion for music. I go and I look for records. I look for music. I dig. That's what we call that.
Digging.
Just crate digging all day. And I always keep my eye out just for anything, any opportunities. And I was up in Western Massachusetts. That's where I've been living for some time. And they have tag sales. People sell stuff outside. Mm-hmm. And there was a crate and it had a couple records in there. Nothing was interesting me. And someone ran out the house and said, "Oh, if you're looking for records, my man has a radio station down the street and he just stores records there. You should go hit him up." Mm-hmm. Radio station was in an abandoned paper mill.
Fascinating. That's always a fascinating story.
Paper mill. And I'm like, I pull up there, boarded up windows, glass broke, that type of thing. I actually remember walking up and thinking, I just let my love for records get me killed.
Right, like this is where it is.
I got set up. They're coming for me. And he comes out from the building and goes, "I know this looks shady, but it's all good. I run my radio station out of here." So he takes me underneath through this giant tunnel and he takes me to a back corridor where there's this hallway filled with just endless stacks of records, just boxes overflowing with records. So after like 2 hours of digging, this one kind of emerges from the pile. And I didn't even recognize it in the beginning. And I said, "Wait a minute, that can't be, that's Missy." And I didn't know anything about this group. Yeah. I didn't know anything about the early years of Missy before we get, Missy Misdemeanor.
Yeah, before she links with Tim. Yeah,
exactly.
For sure.
And so this kind of put me on this path. And from there, it opened up a lot more music, a lot more just knowledge about this movement in hip hop, the work done with Missy, the work done with Timbaland, Devontae Swing. Like, it's just, this record represents everything about music for me. It's always a journey. It's always just searching for the answers.
Yes, always. And 2 hours of crate digging, I would absolutely say that this is a worthy find.
Very worthy.
Absolutely worthy find. So talk to me a little bit about, like, your story. So we got quite a bit of your story here. You go to Oglethorpe and then you go to Harvard and you sort of get centered in education. Talk to me about, like, growing up in Atlanta. Like, what was that like? You're from the Eastside.
I grew up primarily Eastside. And even before that, my roots aren't necessarily here in Atlanta. My family was from New York originally. My parents are New Yorkers. My father was from Harlem, my mom from upstate in Binghamton.
Fascinating.
So New Yorkers, and just during that time, a lot of folks from some of the larger urban cities up north were making their way down south, especially if they had connections. And my mother's side of the family originally was from the South. And my mom had a cousin down in Georgia, and that's how we ended up coming down here. 80s New York, especially in Harlem, like that wasn't the best place to be raising a family at that time. And they wanted more space, more land. Pops wanted that front yard. So they ended up doing some research and ended up moving down here to Stone Mountain. And that's basically where I did a lot of my, that's where a lot of my formative years, my upbringing was. Stone Mountain, also Decatur, just Eastside, just bouncing around. And for me, it was a lot of, I was an outdoors kid, sports kid, always just active.
What sports?
Basketball, football. Wasn't as great at baseball, but basketball and football were my favorite. Absolutely. Yeah. Wide receiver and also point guard. Like those are just, I just loved being outside, but also getting lost in the woods. Me and my friends, we used to hike. We used to go look for trails. We always looked for just random like shacks and stuff back in the woods, all that kind of stuff. But that was kind of my upbringing, just always being outside, but also surrounding myself with a lot of different types of people. And was kind of my upbringing, because Stone Mountain, it's a majority Black city, but it's kind of like this, almost like a refugee city in a lot of ways, because people's coming.
It is the largest population of Somali refugees in Georgia. Yeah, for sure. So I'm from the East Side too.
Exactly. So we know that connection, and I think as a kid growing up, I didn't have any language for what I was seeing.
Yeah.
Where you just know it's like, wow, everyone's like, they're not just like from Atlanta. Like this person came from another country. This person's from New York. This person's from Chicago. I had a very interesting mixture of just stories and experiences around me, but I was the kid that asked questions a lot. Mm-hmm. I know it sounds corny and classic, but like, and everyone says it, but they don't really mean it. I think.
They don't really
mean that. Like when they say, like, I was corny, quiet, awkward, Black Puerto Rican kid. My hair is crazy curly, don't know what to do with it at the time. Big glasses, and just asking weird questions, and always just interested in things that no one was asking questions about. Like no one wanted to hang around the elders and hear them talk, but I did. My friends were like, oh, we're going to play basketball, we're going to play video games. I'm like, cool, I'll catch up. I would literally just sit and just start asking questions. So I feel like that was a big part of my upbringing in Stone Mountain, just absorbing the stories. A lot of stories. And a lot of imagery evoking that,
Yeah.
What it's like to grow up in Stone Mountain, where
inspiration's everywhere.
Everywhere. As well as the other side of that coin. A beautiful,
warnings of what not to do, for sure.
A beautiful Black city that represents a lot of things in terms of progress, in terms of enterprise and innovation, but then it all is under the shadow of this mountain that also portrays another narrative. So that's a piece of my background. That's a little chapter. There's probably some other stuff, but it's definitely, it's a lot of chapters, but all towards this one narrative of me always trying to, I think, find and pursue knowledge that meant something. That was always kind of that's the calling card. That's the returning feature for me.
Yeah, same, which is why we call it modern philosophy.
There it is.
We have very similar. And so what's so funny is our stories are almost running parallel. So my parents are from Chicago, and then we end up in Stone Mountain, Georgia. Mm. We end up in Stone Mountain, and then Lithonia, then ultimately Snellville. And then we found out our high schools were like 2 miles from each other. You went to Shiloh, I went to South. And so it's like very parallel, but also remaining curious, right? Like looking for the stories, looking for the answers, or at least trying to find the answers, which is like the fundamentals of philosophy, but ultimately storytelling. And so speaking of storytelling, I know Miguel because Miguel has been a part of my artistic storytelling journey for like a year now. Yeah, it's been almost 2 years. So we met maybe April of 2020, shortly after the murder of George Floyd. And we were at an artistic protest, which I had never been to one of those before. Had you ever been to one of those before?
I had not, actually. I think that's what drew me there, was the fact that all the protests that were happening and all the demonstrations, I saw the artists doing something, and I'm like, no, I haven't been to anything like that before.
Yeah, I hadn't. So I was invited to do a poem. And then they introduced this harmonica player. And of course, I'm looking for like the 60-year-old guy with his glasses on. And then I see this cat. And I'm like, yeah, but I thought y'all said there would be harmonica here.
Sorry, where's Uncle such an
Right,
insert
where's
name?
Uncle Santiago,
yeah.
right? Tio, where's Tio at? And so he plays, and I'm like so enamored with your work and your style, and just like even being there and using it in the context of protest, which all the pieces are coming together for me, that you have sort of a background in justice and in restoring justice and education, which we will get to. But all of that to say, Miguel has been an active part of my storytelling experience and has been playing harmonica for my past 2 or 3 productions, and we're working on a record together. And so I'm super excited that you have come along with this journey. How did you find harmonica?
How did I find this?
What makes you decide that this is what you want to play? Because I never saw harmonica in band, orchestra, none of that.
And not many kids grow up saying like, I can't, I'm going to be the greatest harmonica player of all time. It's usually, guitar,
Yes.
maybe, piano. A lot of other instruments come before. And with me, I do have a musical background in a sense. I was in choir through high school. Even back middle school is when I started choir. So singing was being in chorus. That was always kind of my first introduction to music and music theory and just composition and all of that. But then I grew up in a musical household. A lot of family members involved with music. My pops used to play trumpet and he would sing. My sister is a multi-instrumentalist. She plays cello, that was her first instrument, then piano, then all these things. But harmonica is not anywhere in any of that. Then one year I'm in college and I believe it's my final year of undergrads. I'm getting ready to graduate. I'm really into blues at this time.
Yes.
I go through various stages, and I imagine we'll talk a little bit more about some of my musical influences, but I was really going through a blues phase. And that blues was always in my background, but for some reason it was hitting hard because there was a lot going on in my life, and usually blues kind of find you when you usually are kind of idling at the crossroads. So that's where I was really getting into my blues kick, and I was drawn to the harmonica players. I was just some of the greats, like there are a lot of greats in the genre of blues, but when you hear like a Junior Wells or a Little Walter or a James Cotton and all these other, like a Slim Harpo, like those were the names that I kept coming back to over and over. I'm like, there's something about that, the way they're playing that thing it's just hitting me. It's not quite hitting me the way the guitar was and all that, but it's the harmonica. So one of my friends in college, actually 2 of my friends, these 2 young women who ended up becoming very important friends and just supports for me. And like I said, I was going through a lot in that final year of college and just in family life and home and just circumstances, getting ready to graduate, not quite knowing what the next path for me was going to be. And they were like 2 angels in a way that just kind of were sent down like, yo, hold him down for this last year, make sure he doesn't. And they just came out of nowhere, and we used to have conversations about religion and music and art. And they noticed I kept listening and talking about these harmonica players. So for around Christmas time, they gave me a gift of a harmonica.
Wow.
And they're like, yo, you keep
so
talking
cool.
about it. You keep talking about these harmonica players. You keep playing the same damn song over and over again. You need to just learn to play harmonica. So they put it in my hands.
Wow.
And I think I'd had a couple before, but like if you hang around musicians, you just end up getting a harmonica, but no one ever does anything with it. Like I think my dad had bought me one just as like kind of like a joke gift, and I had always had it around the house, but nothing.
I think I had one from Cracker Barrel or something like that.
You know what I'm saying? You're right. Everyone got the Cracker Barrel one right next to the syrup bottle. It's like, why do you have a harmonica in the syrup bottle? You
What
went
is
to
this
Cracker
doing
Barrel.
here?
You went to. That was it. But when they put it in my hand, that's when it became serious.
For sure.
And I just kept at it. I actually taught myself. I went on YouTube and got a couple of videos, but I would learn by listening to my favorites and just trying to imitate them. And from there, it kind of grew and grew. I started playing at some of the open mics around Atlanta. Fat Matt's Rib Shack is probably the first place I ever played.
Wow. And then what a first place to play now.
I mean,
talk about blues.
Talk about
happening
blues.
at Fat Matt's.
It was one of my, I mean, that's like sacred ground for me too. You go in there, the smell of the pulled pork sandwiches, and then the wall of Mount Rushmore of blues.
Yep.
And I would go and I would listen, me and my friend, I had a good friend, Chad, and we were both blues heads. So we go down every Wednesday, or like once a week at least at one point, to just hear some blues and eat some barbecue and drink some beers. And he actually got me up on stage once. And that's kind of the first time I think I ever played in front of people. It was like 4 or 5 people, wasn't a lot. There was already a harmonica player on stage. And I was like, I'm a homework kid. So I'm like studying, literally, like I'm like writing stuff down, like what's the name of that song? And he notices I'm really paying attention. And we start talking around kind of like the intermission. He takes a break.
Yeah.
We start talking. He's like, so what do you play? I'm like, well, I'm learning harmonica. And my friend Chad's like, yo, he's nice on it. You need to get him on stage and let him.
It's always a friend,
it's
right?
always a friend. And the harmonica player was like, yeah, you can come on up. Matter of fact, I'll let you use my rig and play a song. And sure enough, I went up there. I was nervous, and I stayed with it. And that was kind of I think the first indication that, okay, I was able to hold my weight through a song. They even let me stay on for another one. Maybe we got something here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it all really started to come together, and then just kept practicing, kept going to open mics, kept meeting different bands.
Yeah.
And now it was inseparable. It was like another piece of me at a certain point.
Yeah, because you're nice at it. And I never would have thought that you picked it up. I was expecting that story to start earlier.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Late.
So picking it up in college.
Which is why I don't consider myself as experienced and, as resumed as some of the other artists, especially who do play harmonica. There are guitar players who play harmonica just as a secondary instrument who can probably play it better than me because they've had more experience with it. And it's just, for me, I kind of came across this late.
Yeah.
But I did notice my learning curve was pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I kept getting into those situations where at first I was getting on stage, maybe not out of pity, but like kind of like, let the kid up and let him blow. He ain't gonna mess up the set.
Right.
But I would always get on stage out of curiosity. Someone would just be curious. Because like you said, when you first heard there was a harmonica player come to the stage at the protest,
right.
You didn't expect me. So when there's a kid like me coming up and like I'm at blues joints, I'm at country joints trying to go to open mics. And, everyone is wearing a certain attire. I'm still rolling up with jerseys and oh, I play harmonica. And they all think there's just so many questions going through their mind. They just want to see it. So they'll let me up on stage. So I noticed I had something there. Yeah. The pure curiosity factor gets me on stage. But what kept me on stage is the fact that it wasn't a gimmick. It wasn't like, oh, it sounds good at it. Like, yo, he can hold his own. So I still remember some of the first gigs where I would get on stage, play with like the house band at like an open mic. Yeah. And they would let me play a couple, and then they kept inviting me back up to like just join the house band. Wow. That was my, that's all. I know I'm digressing from story to story.
That's good. That's cool.
But it's actually it was when I first moved up north. So, I spent a lot of my time learning harmonica down here and kind of getting the foundation. But I moved up north, and this was to really start my career in education. But I'm in a whole new place. I'm in Connecticut, New Haven, Connecticut. Yeah. I don't have any family up there. I've never been to New England. And it was a lot of circumstances that kind of led me there. But I'm in this new space alone, trying to kind of create something for myself, whether it's in music, education, just trying to create a life for myself. And I remember going to downtown New Haven. There's a street there, Crown Avenue, Crown Street or Crown Avenue. And Crown has all the bars and music joints, and it's just like a strip filled with everything. And I went with my little case of harmonicas, and I'm just walking down the street listening for music. And if anything sounded like I can get on it, I would go in. And I started finding out about all the open mics. And at the end of the avenue, there's a place called Cafe 9, historic kind of more divey bar type place. But a lot of acts come through there. And I remember this place is like about the size of this room we're in. And I go in there, there's a house band, and every Sunday they do blues open mics. So I'm like, this is where I'm going to get really good practice. So I go in, I go to the band, I would go and put my name on a little clipboard. I would always be the first there. And I remember just being very polite. They kept saying, like, you're very polite. Like, you just come in, you just kind of go off to the side, you write your name down. I'm like very quiet. I have my notebook out. I always have a notebook on me, just observing. And I get up there, and the way the open mics work is they do a set, the house band, they bring on the acts. Each act can do like 2-3 songs, and they can use the house band if they want.
Okay, yeah.
And for me, I definitely want the band. So I'm like, yeah, y'all stay up. And they're like, what do you want to do? And they were already surprised at harmonica. They're like, all right, what do you, like, you call them. We never get to play with a harmonica player. And I'm like, do y'all know we did Howlin' Wolf? That was the first one off the bat. And I knew I had to impress these guys because they were kind of OGs. So I had to make sure and give them a good one. So we did that, did 2 other songs, and then I'm walking off the stage. I'm like, appreciate it, thanks. Walking off, like, no, you just hang back, like, stay up. We're about to do a set. You can play with us. And after that, I would come back each week, put my name on the list. And I remember, like, maybe the 3rd or 4th time in, they're like, yo, stop putting your name on the list. Just
go to the band. Just go on stage.
They say, like, here's your mic. You can use our mic on, they even let me use an amp. And they're like, yo, that's your amp, plug in. You hear a song that you like, you come up and you play with us. That's how it works.
Wow.
So that was the first time I remember, like, having like almost like a regular kind of gig.
Yeah.
And getting more comfortable around musicians and getting more comfortable in my art here. And yeah, just kind of, that's where it really started to like snowball. From there, I started learning about other open mics. Other artists started hearing about me because there ain't a lot of harmonica players.
I imagine that you're one of a few.
They're like, are you that harmonica player I heard about who like was playing the other week there? Because there's just, there's a million guitar players.
Yeah.
And I know I keep going I'm not, no disrespect to guitar players.
No,
I don't want any beef.
They're sacred here, but yes, I know what you mean.
But it is when you're like me, and I wasn't as good at guitar. I wasn't as good as piano. I tried other instruments. They didn't click. And singing, I enjoyed, but my voice, like, I knew it wasn't gonna be that thing to distinguish me. Mm-hmm. So when you have a love and passion for music, but the other more traditional things aren't hitting, you gotta find a way to distinguish yourself. That's always like the one-on-one of, especially if you want to try to do something in music, especially hip hop. Like, a lot of people can rap, but you gotta have something that makes you stand apart from the other artists. Yeah. That this became kind of like, these were my bars. Like, I got something for you, and I know you haven't heard this before.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I will say, it still surprises me, but I'm so, so, so glad that I encountered you, because I didn't realize how much I loved harmonica. Like, I'm a Stevie Wonder. Not just a fan, a stan. And I know I'm rather young to be a stan, but like, I showed you, we were going through our records before the interview, and I was showing you, like, my Songs in the Key of Life is my prized possession. Amazing. And Stevie would pick up a harmonica and would add it. And so I'm just like, I really love this. And it almost, like, I feel like the grittiness of spoken word meshes well with, like, blues, speakeasy vibes. So that's always super dope. So you brought a bag of records that you have over there. I was gonna like ask you about your influences, but you already started naming some. Like, you already started.
Absolutely. Like, I mentioned a couple of the harmonica players that in blues, especially, that really influenced me. Of all of them, Slim Harpo was actually probably one of the biggest. And not a lot of people recognize the name, but Slim he was the fun kind of playboy of blues, because he had the hits. And it was at a time when blues, like, the hits, that's not how they were thinking. They made their cuts, and then the producers made it a hit, but he went in there and recorded trying to get people to dance. He's like, I want people out on the floor. I want to come up with a cool, like, saying that doesn't even make sense, but people just got to move to it. And he did it all, and he did things with the harmonica that I still can't replicate. But he had, like, a style that just really, that resonated. But yeah, just in blues, those are like a couple of the names of a long list. But
Country, though. So I wanted to pick up on that note. You said you were not only just going to blues places, but country places, which is where harmonica is pretty prevalent.
That's right. A lot of country, bluegrass, folk. Because when I moved up north, I don't know if you know this about New England. There aren't as many black folks up there. I don't know if you...
I've been there a few times.
I mean, you know, and there is a diversity definitely in New England that's very different from the South that also was very unique to me.
For sure, yeah.
But in terms of like trying to find some of the classic music places where I would be going, like there's not like R&B clubs and funk spots and blues like places like that. It's a lot of like there's more country music where I was living, like, and there was more folk and bluegrass scenes where I can access easily. And I was in the mindset, I need to practice. I just got to keep practicing. I don't care who I play with. I want to practice more and I want to sound good no matter who I play with. And I got the idea, like, maybe I should stop looking just for blues places because, like, if I can learn to play with a country band and a blues band and a funk band, and then if a hip hop artist ends up, like, linking up with me, and if I can get busy with all of them, then that's a resume that I can,
for sure,
that I can start to tout. And it makes you more comfortable because if you're just so used to jumping in so many different music scenes, and all of them have their own rules though. Like
I can imagine.
The country place has a different set of kind of like just norms and cultures, and they're not used to seeing someone like me walking with like a Wu-Tang hoodie and harmonicas and just like, but even that's one of the things I've always appreciated about music. I mean, it's not a perfect world, and there's division within it. There's a lot of politics around music, and that is for sure. But one of the things that I've noticed remains consistent is if you have game, like if you come in, like game is just, if you can come in, you can even get some country dudes who may not have the politics that align with mine, right? Like we might have a different political ideation. We might have a different allegiance towards different things. And hell, he might have some views about me or the community that I come from or the people that I represent that I may not be in favor of. But even when I play this thing well enough, anyone in that space who might hold those same views, even they're like, God damn, like they stop for a moment. And it is kind of cool because it does get it playing in country places. I'm very aware of like what me being up there means.
For sure.
And kind of how the eyes might be looking at me in a certain way. But one of the things I've learned is it did allow me to open up conversations more because afterwards people were just curious to talk to me. And not just because I was a black dude up there in the country band of a whole bunch of white folks. They were curious about the harmonica. They were curious about why I was so young and interested in it. And they just wanted to know more. And then that allowed me to open up these conversations with people because I had a lot of beliefs about country music and country artists, and some of the most progressive people I've met are hanging out at some of these shows.
For sure.
And yeah, so like, but country music is definitely, that was an unexpected turn for me because I didn't come up north thinking I'm gonna get on with the country band, because one of the bands I ended up touring with, like playing regularly with, is they're a country kind of bluegrass band. And asked me that when I was growing up in Stone Mountain, did I imagine going up north and playing with the country?
Bluegrass, sure.
Not all day, but I mean, that's also, it's indicative of how my music mind works. I get bored with one genre pretty quick, and I don't like to dwell in one genre. I just couldn't do that, and especially in the family I grew up with, and that's kind of where the records come into play, because it's just a lot of this bag. You want me to grab the bag?
Yeah, you can grab the bag.
I can,
Miguel brought this big old bag of records.
Just a big old bag of records, and it's a mix. It's Pop's records, it's my sister's records, and those two, the musical influences were so diverse, like the range of music.
I can imagine.
Funk, soul, jazz, like Motown, R&B, like those are some of the staples. My mother and father introduced all of that, but salsa, even country back in the day, even like country wasn't foreign to me as well. So like these are some of the genres like my parents were introducing early, but then my sister was punk. My my sister was really going into punk, grunge, alternative rock, all that kind of stuff. And then it was just so many random albums just scattered around the house. Like, for me, it was like a kind of a journey. So I would just be digging and going to my dad's records or CDs or tapes or whatever. And it's like, all right, what's here? Okay, and then like this is my... So,
that's what he randomly pulled out of his bag.
This would have came from Mom's stack for sure.
Yes.
And my mom and dad loved Anita Baker. So like,
I'm sure I have that exact same record in my stack from my dad.
Exactly. And then you go like a week later, and then you like go around the house. Oh, this is good. Like, this is something from my sister's stack. This is a Japanese salsa band. Yeah.
This is some shit. Albert is behind the camera. This is some shit he would find. Japanese salsa.
Japanese salsa band just out here. And, see, the range. Barry Manilow. My mom loved Barry Manilow. By the way, shout outs to Barry Manilow doing the thing. Mayflower's a dope album.
Who doesn't love Barry Manilow?
Who doesn't love some Barry? But it's just, that's a Quincy one. What do we got here? Herbie Hancock, of course. But there's just like such... Like, this is what it was like.
That Minnie Riperton record I have.
Yeah, the Minnie Riperton. Oh, yes, with the ice cream.
Yes.
It's like, there's the standards, and then there's like some things you would expect, but then you come into my household on any given day, you might, here's a good one. John Luke Ponty. This is a brother who plays electric violin, and my mom and dad loved this man so much. 80s, like, this is him.
Oh, yeah.
You know what this is? This is hip hop. Y'all don't even, that's hip hop. I'm sure this man I'm pretty sure he's been sampled. But it's so funny because these were like so standard to me growing up. But then when you start having conversations with people, and a lot of them assume like, oh, well, he knows about soul, he knows about this, he knows about that. But then when I start throwing out these band names, that's when it's like, oh, wait a minute. How do you know about this group? How do you know about this genre?
Yeah, I come up, everybody knows that I rock with like Band of Brothers, and I come up with like, hardcore musicians. You definitely, like, when it comes to your musical education, I can tell that you took that so seriously.
I was always a good student, but I was like a top student when it came to music. Like, it's just, you got to know it. And there's a lot of knowledge when you start just pursuing your musical interest. A lot of knowledge manifests itself from that because a lot is connected to music. But it's just, for me, it allowed me to connect with more people because everybody likes music, some form of music. And the more you know about music, the more you can just talk to people because you may not, like I said, going up and trying to start conversations based off of things. Like, if I want to get into a political conversation, that's one thing. If I want to get into, like an academic conversation, that's another thing. But not everyone is going to be here for that. But for some reason, if I pick out an artist that connects with something from your childhood, I got you.
Yep. Then it opens the door to so many other conversations. So talk to me a little bit about like how you decide that education is your track.
So I was raised by an educator. My mom was a teacher as well. Yeah. But she wasn't necessarily the reason why I wanted to be a teacher. It wasn't like she was molding me to like kind of pick up in her footsteps. If anything, I think she definitely didn't want me to be a teacher. Yeah. Most teachers want you like be a lawyer, a doctor, do one of those things. But for some reason, education stuck out to me because I was always good at working with youth. Mm. So even when I was like in high school, I volunteered a lot and would do like mentoring programs. And I was always helping people with homework and just a lot of just working with people who were younger than me and just trying to inspire. Yeah. And create really like safe and encouraging spaces for like that type of growth. And in college, that became my thing. When I was studying English, I didn't know if I thought I was just going to be maybe a writer one day, maybe an author, maybe a professor of literature. And I was thinking more along those lines. And then being a high school like English teacher was kind of like the last on the list, but it was always kind of there. But as I was in college, I noticed that when I wasn't in the classroom, I was always volunteering. There was a charter school right behind our campus at Oglethorpe, Path Academy. And very unique school with a very fascinating history in terms of how it got created. I had a lot of respect for the principal, who used to be the principal over at Cross Keys High School. So I followed she built the middle school. This is like a very condensed version, but the charter school, it's K through 8, and it was meant to basically disrupt the school to gang pipeline that was happening, because a lot of her, when she was at Cross Keys, she remembers losing so many students to gang issues over there. And so she was looking for a school to kind of prevent that. So by the time they were coming up through K through 8 and they got to 8th grades, these students were being sent to some of the best independent schools around Atlanta. They were getting scholarships and things of that sort because the school does a really good job of working with them, and also trying to work to improve Cross Keys High School. So she had this, it was just a really cool institution, and I ended up spending a lot of my time over there working with students. I was counseling, I was doing tutoring, I was even I remember leading like literacy courses and instructional courses. I used to work with the at-risk youth a lot though. So like, these are the kids, a lot of the kids were coming from something at that school. But even within that group, you got the kids who were dealing with some crazy trauma at the house, and they're just going through it. So I used to work with a lot of those kids. The kids who get kicked out of the classroom because they're being too disruptive. I worked with them, made sure they were able to still do some work, but I was able to kind of give them that space to unwind, because a lot of times it was them coming home from something, or like it was them leaving their home and that morning, and there's just something crazy that happened there. Like I remember one afternoon I came to the school to do my regular kind of volunteering hours. I would come in the late afternoon and I'd help set up and get ready for the after school programs. And I'm getting ready, and the counselor comes to me and she looked like she had just got done crying. And she said, "Oh, I forgot you were coming. I'm so sorry. Actually, I might need your help. Can you help me with something?" She had 4 young men sitting in her office, and they looked like they had kind of been tearing up too. Like it was just like you can feel the emotion.
Yeah, the tension, for sure.
And she goes, they ended up getting kicked out the class because they were just being disruptive and they were angry. They live in an apartment complex, and this morning they saw a dead body in the pool on the way to the bus. So clearly, they walked into the building, just their mind wasn't there.
Yeah.
And something probably happened in the classroom, teacher didn't know, and they're there now. So the counselor, and she did great work with students, but she was a younger white woman. So she knew that her conversation was only going to go so far. So I remember, and I'm not trained in a lot of things. I'm still finishing undergrad. I'm still dealing with some of the things these students are probably dealing with, but I remember going in and being able to kind of talk with them and just give them enough space where they felt they were good enough to get back in the classroom.
Yeah.
But it was just, though, that was kind of my early introduction to education, realizing I love being in the classroom, but I love creating the spaces outside the classroom where learning is still happening, where students are feeling safe, and everyone's really tapping into their truest and their most authentic potential.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my first soiree with education. And then I just noticed I spent a lot of time working with that school and Drew Charter School over in Eastlake. I have a lot of history with that school. They started a mentor program the year that I was in college, and I was part of the inaugural mentors.
Oh, wow.
And it was great. We used to do a lot of great work there. And I remember Eastlake when I was growing up, because my dad, he used to work for Frito-Lay. He had a lot of different jobs.
Okay.
Chip man, they used to call him the Chip man. Drive around with the truck, had all the chips. Kids loved him because he would bring out.
Who doesn't love the Chip man?
Yeah, who doesn't love that? But my dad would take me to work with them sometimes, and he, even though we were out in Stone Mountain, he was driving. They had him placed in. They gave him all the hood routes, so everything from Simpson Avenue, anything West Atlanta, Southwest Atlanta. Eastlake at the time, which used to be they used to call it Little Vietnam back in the day.
Oh, wow.
Because it was wild. And I remember my dad, that was some of his stops over there. And I remember when they built Drew Charter School and the affordable housing units there that replaced the projects. And it was part of a big community, basically rejuvenation initiative. That's the rebuilding or restoration of the community. And people study it actually to this day. I know, as a footnote, ironically, in one of my master's classes I was taking when I was at Harvard, one of the professors chose to talk about that charter school I worked with.
Oh, wow.
And there's case studies on it because the model that they use is very unique. And I just imagine that just years later. This was a community I remember delivering chips with my dad when we were on his route, going into some of the scariest gas station and convenience stores I can remember as a kid. I still like remember some of the imagery of it.
Yeah.
And then going there, fast forwarding to it having one of the better performing high schools in this city of Atlanta now, and just it's like night and day.
Wow.
And my dad still remembers like the night and day of it. And just my love for education traces back to some of those spaces and some of those experiences. But that's where it really started. I want to work in education. I want to do that. So that led to me teaching. That's where the Mississippi chapter comes in. I got a lot of chapters.
Yeah.
And that can either be, some people are like, that's great. You have so many different, like, so many different, narratives and a lot of different, like that's one way to look at it. Another is, I'm just so wayward in this world, you're just trying to find it.
All over the place, yeah.
So
I'm an Aquarius, so it either looks like madness or genius.
Right.
There's like no in between.
Depending on how the light hits it, right?
Yeah,
it's like, that's what I meant. That's exactly what I meant, But yes, there was my first official teaching job was with Teach for America.
Oh, wow.
And that's what brought me to Mississippi. And I did that for a little while. I didn't finish. It's a 2-year commitment. I left after the first year. Very long story.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'll say this about Mississippi and my teaching experience there. I think it definitely it made an impression, and it kind of put me on the path of everything I would do in education after. So everything that you read in your very lovely introduction of me, and all those things really trace back to my experiences there, because you get it was a good look at the strength that exists within students that have absolutely nothing, come from nothing, and if they ever did have anything, it was taken from them. And being able to still embody a strength that is incomparable, but also seeing how broken a system can become, and how you're taken aback by how broken it is, and then you're frightened by how much more broken it will be moving forward.
I see.
That year being in Mississippi, in the Delta, I lived in Indianola, Mississippi, home of B.B. King.
Wow.
I taught in Rouville, Mississippi, home of Fannie Lou Hamer, one of the dopest civil rights activists ever, the one who told us to get more chairs and seats in Congress. That's
absolutely.
Sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's where I was teaching. That's where I was experiencing life. That's where I was trying to instill a love of literacy and just literature and writing in my students. That's where I would play. I would put together pick up basketball games after school for the students, because like they couldn't use the gym. Not everyone can use the gym, and there's not basketball courts in the Delta. It's cornfields and cotton fields and catfish ponds. So I would take them to the next closest city, which is like an hour from them. I would go around and pick up students, and we go down to the courts on Saturday, and you got to school them somehow. So that's how I did it on the court. But just in case basketball was such a big part of just my experience as well. But in educating students, I would talk to students about college access on the basketball courts while waiting to pick up next.
Wow.
Yeah. So Mississippi taught me a lot about education. It formed me a lot as an individual, but it almost broke me in a lot of ways.
I can imagine.
And, there are things I can't, I'll never be able to unsee, things that are just going to be seared in my mind, things that still circle back to me. And some of it comes out on this harmonica. When I hit that note that people know and feel, they're like, oh, there was some pain behind that note. Some of that definitely comes from the Delta historically, but also in terms of my personal experience, right? But this really helped form me as a harmonica player as well. I mean, I'm going to the original juke joints where some of these players came from.
At the crossroads.
You were literally at the crossroads.
Literally.
And you learn about the culture around the crossroads. It's fascinating it's a fascinating piece of land, and even the geographic definition
For
of it
sure.
means so much. It's a piece of land isolated by 2 strips of water.
Yep.
It's isolated basically from everything.
Yep.
And the minute you cross the Yazoo, if you're coming from our way, or if you cross the Mississippi,
Yeah.
the minute you cross over one of those rivers, you know something's different. You know something's changed. You just know the rules
It's
are
an
different.
energy feel, yeah.
Felt it when I entered the Delta for the first time, and I still remember like the day I left. Like it was a very formative year, for better and worse. It just it did push me to like a brink of something.
It activates you.
It activates you
For sure.
That is a very I thought of many words to describe like my experience, but activation, like it being activated, is that's very true. There's nothing truer, because from there I was just trying to put something together, but then when I left the Delta, something clicked.
Yep. It flips the switch on you.
Took a while though. It's not like it was immediate. Like I came back and I was ready to go. There was the floundering a little bit. That year, there was like 2 years after, was a little bit of just trying to figure this out. And in that time also, I lost my father. There was a lot of things happening just in my family in terms of mental health, and just trying to get a grip on reality, but just like trying to keep our feet planted on the earth, because like everything was just kind of, it was unraveling real quick. And I had just left Mississippi, and it wasn't on the best terms. I wish I can say I was able to leave with closure and like reconciliation and just like a sense of clarity. So all that's happening in that time when I returned from Georgia is just a feeling of shame. Leaving the Delta felt like I couldn't cut it.
Yeah.
And a sense of loss, of course.
Grief,
I lost one of the most influential people in my life, somebody that instilled a lot of the values that have guided me through my career in terms of education, right? In terms of access. And it's funny, this is from a man who got his GED. And he never had access to that type of higher education, but he had this profound love of knowledge, and he had a profound love of people, a humanity within him that I never had an explanation for. Because you look at his life and what he came from, a lot was taken from him. Mm-hmm. But yet he always had his eyes on others. He was always curious about the well-being of others, what other people have access to, even though he was at a point where things were starting to come together in his life. And I was always amazed by that, but it made it even much harder when I lost him, because I felt like, if there was any good in our family, because there's good in our family, of course, but it's just, when you put all the chapters together, there's a lot of heartbreak, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot in those chapters. And when you look at all of that, the good moments do get lost in that. Mm-hmm. But when I lost my father in that year, amidst everything that was happening, I just felt like, that good spirit had almost left our family entirely. And that's a very hard thing to recover from. The harmonica helped me kind of sort a lot of that out too.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time.
It's a really emotional instrument to play. It's like almost one of the most emotional instruments.
It's the perfect instrument in that regards, right? It's hard to create. It's like people think of it just being an instrument of like, kind of sadness, but it does a really good job of portraying that. And during that time when I lost my father, I think that was all the energy I was trying to get through it.
Yeah.
But then at a certain point, for me, I knew I needed to continue to tap into that, but then make sure it doesn't dwell there. There's a way, you got to be able to make people rejoice and like kind of still be able to get off their feet with that. Because that was a big element of my father too. Like, he was a very jovial individual. His laughter-filled rooms. He was very, he always wanted to see that in others.
Yeah.
So I knew that if I was going to yield this, I just can't be bringing people to tears with it. I got to be able to make sure I'm making sure I'm getting that groove in them, making sure that I'm leaving them with something that they can actually take with them and benefit them.
For sure. And I think you do a good job of balancing both. But it's such an interesting like journey through like Mississippi Delta, and then like
Back to
and then back
Atlanta.
to Atlanta, and then now the North. So now, what's your main mission?
My main mission now, my main mission is to continue to, it is always going to be to continue to help inspire youth, make sure that they have access to everything. That isn't, it's funny, not, nobody in this world deserves everything. But you deserve something, and you deserve a shot at it, is what I believe. You're not going to get everything.
But you deserve the chance.
You deserve
to play
a
the
chance.
Game, for sure.
That's always kind of been my main objective for me in my work in education. It's just giving everybody the chance to say, I can do that. I don't want to do that. This is not for me. This is for me. But just to make sure that they're getting in the spaces, they're getting the opportunities, and that they're feeling encouraged and celebrated along the way. That's always been the main objective for me in education. And I've been able to do that over the years working in higher ed. I had worked in admissions for many years, so college admissions, trying to reform the practices there.
Yes, which is big work.
Big work. It can be controversial. It can be conflicting in a lot of ways. Admissions is a tricky business, and it all goes towards the business of higher ed at the end of the day, which is
a problem within itself, an ethical issue that we've privatized education.
And especially here in this country, when you look at kind of the history of education and its foundations, it already started off on a rocky foot.
Yeah.
It was the last priority. And so as a result, we're always playing catch up in terms of trying to just figure out what we want education to look like for our youth in this country, right? And it's just so, like, it's conflicting. It's a lot of things. And being in admissions was a whole new level of responsibility for me in terms of my role in education. And, I'm at a new vantage point. And I was recommended to go that way as well, because I was on the other side. I was in the classroom trying to send students that way. It was a good friend and a mentor of mine. He was one of the few Black staff at Oglethorpe that I knew. Yeah. And he worked in admissions. David Dixon, he went off to law school, and I think he's now practicing law. David was the one who told me, hey, maybe you should consider working on the other side of the desk. You send students off to college, work in admissions where you're getting them ready to transition into college now. Maybe you might find yourself in a position to really help students or make changes in the way the admissions office does things, because you can write new policies that make sure that offices are giving a fair shot to all students. Because the thing about it is, in admissions, the boss can set standards, and those standards inform how you look at students and who's even making it on the table to be looked at. If you start changing those policies, reforming those practices, it starts to open up a lot more. The playing field gets a little bit more even. Now, I'm never naive enough, and that's just throughout my upbringing and being raised by a teacher, an educator, being raised by someone who didn't have an opportunity to access higher education, being raised by both of them, if there's one thing I learned is don't ever be naive about they cover both tracks with that, especially. My father had the street smarts growing up, and my mother was always just an insanely intelligent and intuitive woman. And between that, they told me always to ask questions, to understand the full extent of the situations I'm in, understand the system, but then never be naive about it. Don't think that, especially if someone is praising their work, saying like, well, I'm doing the right thing. Like, yes, you are, and you should continue to try to do as much good through your work if you have that opportunity. But also understand that there are going to be things above that pay grade, above that level, that's where you start to run into the things that you can't change, and the things where it's just intangible. Like you feel like you can't even put your hands on it, which led me to the next stage for me, which was getting my master's. That's kind of, I was running into that a lot where I was doing great work, but then
there's a ceiling.
There's a ceiling. And then when I started getting peeks at some of the decisions that are being made above me that are still kind of closing in on my work, like now I can see it, and I can, if I see it now, maybe I have a better idea of how I can change it.
Yeah.
But then I realized my educational background only got me so far, or it gets you so far before you get to that point of, all right, well, I have the knowledge to deal with these things, but the conversations they're having on the other end, there's too much language I don't understand. There's too many concepts that I'm only familiar with on a surface level. But if I really want to go in there and have a conversation and be taken seriously, and then be strategic as well, I might need to go back and get my master's.
Yeah.
And I might need to understand how policy works, because I didn't know how policy worked. Before I was just, I'm the teacher who loved working with kids. I'm the program guy who created really great summer programs and different initiatives and worked with scholarship programs over the years and college access camps. And I did everything right in that regard. But then there was that other half of the story. Like, oh, what about all the policies that get made that influence the funding that I have to work with, and all these questions? And I'm like, I haven't even thought about those things. Yeah. But then when you start hitting that ceiling, you're like, okay, how am I going to be able to start talking about those things? And the master's, I thought, was a really good idea to help me get in that direction and get involved and be around other people who are also asking the same questions. Because everyone in my program and everyone at the graduate school I was going to, everybody's there with like a mission. Everybody's there. A lot of people are coming in with a little bit of that anger. Like they've seen behind the curtain, and everyone's in there like, okay, now what's the next step?
How can we make a difference? So, Miguel, now we have a good picture of like who you are artistically and who you are professionally. Yeah. Do you think that, are you fulfilled doing both of those things? Do you ever get a call to do one more than the other? Are you ever like, fuck them kids, I'm going to just be a harmonica player and tour and,
all the time.
All the time.
Love the kids, but sometimes
we all still work with kids, just so you know.
Shout out to
them kids, but we still let them.
We love them. We love them, but there are some times where, and I feel like that's always the dilemma of the artist or just someone who grows up passionate about the arts. Yeah. You always get to that crossroads of, do I want to devote myself towards this fully? Do I have the ability to do so? And is this really like, there's just so many of those questions, right? So like the risk factor, the uncertainty, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of that in the past has always prevented me from putting like both feet in. Yeah. But I feel I've gotten a good balance between the work I do in education and the work I've been able to do as an artist. And I think moving forward, it's just going to be a matter of how I can continue to integrate those worlds to the point where I don't feel like I'm sacrificing one for the other, or just saying, okay, this year it's 60% this year 40% this. Yeah. I feel I want to be able to do music that still has an impact in education.
Yeah, you have thought about teaching harmonica?
I have. I'm not a good, I don't think I'm going to be a good teacher though.
Like, I think you would be great.
I think I would love to, my thing about teaching harmonica, but also just, I love teaching about music in general, right? In terms of like the theory and just kind of history. So I love the ideas of being able to create more spaces where I can do instruction about music, like educate youth about music, but also at the same time be able to create music with them as well. Mm-hmm. So like there's a lot of, I see my ultimate goal being able to one day create a space where I'm doing both. I'm educating the youth. I'm creating a space to create. I'm creating opportunities for artists and educators to work together. I'm always, my greatest asset, I believe, as an educator was being able to pull from a lot of different experiences and then get all those voices in the same space. Mm-hmm. That's always been my goal as an artist in general, is like, I want to make you dance. I don't want to make you move, but I want I want to be able to do that for anybody who walks in the room. And I want to be able to pull up any musician who wants to get down. And it's always been about bringing different voices, experiences, and backgrounds and making sure they're in the same space in a way that's productive, in a way that is creative, conducive, but most importantly, just civil. Like, I'm a middle child. Middle children are kind of like the peacekeepers in a lot of ways, but also like the peace seekers. Like they look for sanctuary because they're kind of like just in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
And that plays a big role in the music that I've always tried to create, and just the educational spaces I've tried to create as well. Is just, I just want a place where there's no chaos and everyone puts it aside for a minute and is civil with each other. Y'all can go back out and beef if you have to in the real world, if that's what it calls for. But in this space, you check it and you can actually look at each other in a civil manner and still have a exchange. But yeah, I don't want to hang up my professional shoes just yet. I still have a couple things I want to finish out in terms of educational policy that I'm working on, in terms of like there's a scholarship program that I was actually I'm in the process of putting together, trying to get more Black and Latinx youth into STEM programs.
Yeah.
So like just a lot of really cool stuff like that. But at a certain point, I hope that I've accumulated enough skill, enough resource, and enough of a network where I can create something of my own. And in that creation, education and music are just two moons around the same planet.
I like that.
So,
same.
Yeah, no more internal dilemma, right? And I understand that as an artist, and believe me, I've had those moments because in the last like 5-6 years when I've been playing, I've had some great opportunities.
Yeah.
I've had an opportunity to come and play with some really good musicians and, raise enough heads. So that can feed it a little bit.
Yeah.
It can feed the ego. And then you're like, maybe I could do this. But then, I look at the bank account. And then also you run up, you end up next week seeing someone who really is about that life, and then you get more perspective.
Yeah,
and that's when I've come down. But I've had some great opportunities to share the stage with some very, in my mind, some very just influential musicians. And I want to continue to have those moments because it does kind of feed that fire. It just kind of continues to feed my vision as well.
Feeds the passion, yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
I'm very much both, which is why modern philosophy even exists.
Yes.
Because I'm not happy if I'm not asking questions, if I'm not being curious, if I'm not, doing teaching, giving people education. I'm also very much not happy if I'm not creating. So it's like I got to be able to do both. And I love that this gives me the opportunity to talk to more folks who also do both and who also sort of balance those worlds. So as far as like music, what are your short-term goals? What do you want to do over the next few years?
Next few years, the biggest thing, I would love to put out my own music project one day.
Yeah,
I've never done that. I've featured on a couple of albums, currently working on one. And I've been lucky enough to get in the studio on other people's projects, but I would love to put out my own piece, my own EP, something along those lines. So musically speaking, I just want to, in the next couple of years, I want to make sure I have at least one project to my name. And I want to bring in a lot of really great people. And I want to get that producer credit. That's that's the big goal for me in terms of I want to create music, I want to write, I want to do a lot of things, but I've always seen myself as a producer, or I've looked up to producers. When it comes to music, I probably love the producer more than the artist sometimes. And it's you're winning if you're both. If you are the artist that produces.
Yeah.
So I hope to put out my own project, of course be a producer on that, but I would also love to produce something for somebody else.
Yeah.
At least start to have that conversation with an artist or a collective where I feel like I have to create for yourself is one thing, but to be able to create for others.
And to help people create a sound. I work with some dope producers and that ability to help an artist find their sound
Yes.
is just like supreme.
Absolutely.
So long term, what's like your big project? What's your dream?
Big project.
Budget doesn't matter. What are you doing?
One of the biggest dream I had, and it came together when I went back and got my master's. I was in this class. It was a proposal writing class. That was one of the big goals as well. When I went back to get my master's, it wasn't about taking classes for me. It was about networking, getting in front of people, connecting with people. But then if I am going to take a class, I need skills. So proposal writing, I got to learn how to write for myself and like put together my ideas in a way that I can get money. And I started working on this proposal in the class, and it got a little bit of traction. Like the professor was really digging it, other people. And this class isn't just like this is a high-level master's course with the people in the class
at
already
Harvard,
at Harvard. Exactly.
At Harvard.
At Harvard University, yes. And the journey there is within itself just a story. Might even require another episode.
I was going to say, it's probably going to be Miguel part 2. Y'all know I love to bring people back on. So Miguel will definitely be back.
And more stories to come. But, just from what you've heard of my background, Harvard wasn't supposed to be a part of that equation at all. But when I was looking at doing a master's, I had a good friend who told me it's not about the program and like the ranking itself, but you want to get in a place where you can be around other visionaries. That's what she told me. She said,
sure.
And I remember I'll give you this little story about how I got into the master's and then how this course event, it basically gave me the vision for my big time goal.
Okay.
Like what I want to do. But the funny story is I remember I'm almost 8 years removed from my undergrad. So I haven't been in school. I've been working for There was a big gap.
Big gap. I see.
And those 8 years is me trying to get my shit together and just figure out life. And just also like kind of a little bit of healing in that process, right? It was a long journey, but 8 years removed, I'm working for different universities over the years. I worked for like 3-4 different universities, but I haven't been a student for 8 years. And I'm like, I don't even know I can go back and get my master's. But I was thinking about, I'm like, I'm going to do it. I want to study policy. I want to do something. I want to get to the next level in my job. But I've started looking at all these programs, and the typical ones are there. The ones that are realistic and kind of like, yeah, this is what you should be doing. And my friend, she is a coworker of mine, Christina Gunnarsdottir. That's a Icelandic name.
Okay.
And from Lower East Side in New York, some of the dopest style. I like steal from her in terms of style. But Christina, KG is what I call her, Killer G sometimes. And she's listening to me. I'm having like not like a midlife crisis, but like I'm like having that moment of like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know if I should go back and get my master's. And and she goes like, great. It's like, yeah, you're gonna go get your master's. I'm like, all right. And I'm thinking of all these schools. And then I feel like she's not listening to me. And then she's like, oh, well, you just need to go to Harvard. And I remember I was like, this is serious, girl. I'm trying to,
I'm trying to figure out school.
I'm talking about I might not get married and all this stuff. You talking about go to Harvard? Like, you're not listening to me right now. She's like, no, I get it, but you need to stop. You speak in visions. Like, you're a visionary thinker, so you speak ahead. You think of the bigger picture. You got to go to a school where you can be around other big thinkers. That's the long, tall, and short of it. Don't worry about, does this offer the right classes? And like, she really put the mindset in me that the reason why you want to go back and get your master's is you just want to be around other hungry people. And not just hungry people, but hungry people who have an impressive background and are going places. Like, they're there to get what they need and bounce and do their thing. Cut to, I'm in the proposal writing class. I'm around those people. Like, exactly what Christina was telling me about. These are people who have one of them has an international business. She was a doctor, and she had an international business where they deliver diabetes supplies and also do diabetes education to third world countries around the world. She was applying for a $1.2 million grant. That's why she's in that class, to work on her proposal to get $1 million grant for her nonprofit that's doing amazing work. So I'm surrounded by people like that. I don't have anything like that on the books. I start putting together this proposal. I'm thinking home. Let's go back home. I'm in Stone Mountain, and I'm thinking about the Tupac Amaru Shakur Center for the Arts. And for anyone who's from DeKalb County might be familiar with it, but here's the other thing about it. There are plenty of people who grew up right down the street from there who have no idea that it ever existed.
Yep.
And my mind kept going back to it because for this proposal, I kept thinking, I'm very big about history. I'm very big about communities, and I'm really big about communities learning about their history and preserving it. Especially for communities that I come from, that's always at risk. So I thought about what can I do to take a place that is almost lost to time, but then resurrect it and preserve it in a way, not only just preserve it, but reimagine it. So I started thinking about the Tupac Center, and I was so upset because I never got a chance to really engage with it because by the time I wanted to get to it, it was already kind of on the decline. Suffered from a lot of financial issues, and it just, Afeni, Tupac's mother, couldn't keep it going. And then it just got lost over time. And I started doing my research on it for the course, and I started getting all the articles and doing the paper trail. What happened to the Tupac Center? Like, why was this thing named after one of the greatest hip hop icons of all time? Someone who I read The Rose That Grew from Concrete. Was my mom made sure that was part of my summer reading list. Afeni Shakur, one of the most badass people in this world.
Activist of our time, for sure.
I mean, cared so much about the youth, cared so much about creating institutional change, and has a history of doing it from when she was 19 years old, fighting the system and winning against the system. But also, this is a woman who's been dealt so many unfair cards. And there's just so much there. And I kept thinking about how much of all this history is in that space and how much education has been in that space. You go there, boarded up, graffiti, everything. The usual, in an area that's experienced a lot of economic decline. This is my hometown. So the ultimate vision came to me about the big goal. What if I could resurrect this space, rename it after actually Afeni, and turn it into basically an educational incubator space where people are coming, students are doing, we're partnering with the local schools in the area, Stone Mountain High School and the DeKalb County schools. We're offering extra curriculum in things like music production, music theory, things like that. Also, anything, documentary filmmaking, score, right? Like anything involving the arts. I wanted to resurrect that space and turn it into an educational space where students are coming in creating, they're learning valuable skills, but then people are using that space to create and using the old studio spaces to make music, make films. Afeni, and this was me picking up Afeni's plan and just picking up right where she left off.
Wow.
She was preparing students to enter film contest right before she had passed away. She was doing summer camps where she was teaching students everything from ballet, different choreography, dance, all that kind of stuff, but then also music production and all of that. There was just so much happening in that space. It was a community garden. She planted the trees there. And she was doing so much just to create a safe haven for the students. That was the whole mission. And my goal was to hopefully bring that space back to life, turn it into a historical landmark so we can actually preserve it. And then from there, turn it into a center for the community where they can actually go create and actually generate revenue for themselves because these projects and these creative endeavors, they don't have to just be that struggling broke artist. There are ways, and you know this better than anyone, there are definitely ways to be able to monetize your worth and be able to take that art, still be able to create something that's authentic, but then see the dividends of it. And that's the ultimate goal. I want to create that space where it's an education, it's a educational center, it's a creation space, like a maker space. It's a space for people who want to do things in community policy. Come there and work on policies to create more, like to create better education. Come there to create work on policies and work with different people and maybe from different universities and city offices to put together initiatives for food justice, like whatever you want to do. But the core of it all is just coming back to resurrecting a space and kind of resurrecting that energy that was there. Because for Afeni, it was under the guise of being kind of like a music and art center, but it was so much more. And I just that's the ultimate goal. And ever since then, I had put together a proposal for it. how we can convert that space into a historical landmark, how people can actually come in and set up shop there and use the studio space, how you can start making relationships with production companies and film companies and like all this stuff to help kind of continue to keep that space alive.
Yeah.
So that's the big goal, because that's a big price tag, though.
It is. I'm thinking, ooh, I can help you find some of it, because I do like to find money for the arts. That's one of my favorite things to do these days.
And I think it would just be once the initial costs are covered, it's this. I don't want the space to be a financial burden for the community.
For sure, sustainability is fundamental,
key, and let that space create wealth for you. Like, I would love to get into film work at some point. So for the proposal, I actually went down to Atlanta. I was able to get a ticket to come back and fly down, and I got some camera equipment, and I know nothing about this, but I actually went to the site and I started working with the brother who actually was trying to do the same thing I was, just different. We had different kind of lanes. And actually, I definitely want to, Jason Burnett, Jay, he started Everybody Eats, which is basically feeding the homeless initiative around Atlanta. 100 meals with $50. He feeds up to 100 people every week. And he doesn't go to the proper places like the shelters and things like that. He goes to the bridge underpasses. He goes to the burnt out joints. He goes to the places where the people need it the most. I got connected with him because we both were looking at the same space.
Oh, wow.
At the same time. He started operating out of there. I'm starting to do my research. I get connected with him. I bring a camera down and I get his story. I get more history on the space. And I started collecting footage of it. And the whole purpose of doing that was, if we ever did reopen that center, I wanted to use the film as like a gift, as like kind of the foundational block of the center. It would be archived there. And it would be the site of the archive that would live in that space, because I don't want it to just be a space where we're creating stuff, but I want it to be a place where you can preserve it and where people can keep some of their most precious information, the precious pieces of work. Film, I want students creating films and filling up that archive so that 20, 30 years later, 40 years later, they know what that space is.
For sure.
Not like what I'm trying to do now, where I might know about the Tupac Center. Someone who grew up in Stone Mountain at a certain time might know about that center. But outside of that grass, there's no knowledge of what Afeni did for that community. And it's amazing because it's something that a lot of other communities would benefit from knowing, that
for
somebody
sure.
like her was able to put this together on her own. And you would think the mother of one of the greatest hip-hop icons shouldn't want for anything when it came to building something like that. Not the case.
Nope. Still wasn't easy to get funding for it.
And yeah, so that's long term. I just want to create that. I don't even know what to call it. I just want
such a dope dream.
I'm always about the space. Like, people want to give it. You can give it the title research center, collab studio, whatever they want to call it, but just call it the space for all I care.
Yeah.
But just people know when they walk in, people are getting busy there.
Yeah.
People are there with intention. People are there and they feel safe. Like, that's the biggest thing. Safety is, and I've mentioned that a couple times throughout our conversation, but I do realize how important that is, more so than ever. And feeling like you're in a safe space means, like, it's not just danger in the sense of I feel like I'm going to be physically hurt. When people talk about creating a safe space, it's just feeling like they're free from anxiety.
Emotional safety, which is one of my favorite things to teach.
And something that you do very well.
Thank you.
Very well. But yes, that's my goal. That's a
dope goal.
That's the top shelf one. Don't know if we're going to get there, but I don't mind trying. Let's try it.
One of the things I told Ian when we first started this, I'm like, shoot for the moon, land on the stars. I got a plan for if I get $60 million. I got a plan for if I get $60.
Yeah.
Either way.
Have a plan.
Either way, there's going to be a plan. And, it's so funny talking to you. I know I have to bring you back because I have like a burning question about like how we get HBCUs to become that place that Harvard was for you, where the visionaries go.
I would love to get into that. there's we have
I'm
much to
already
talk
crafting
about.
the episode in my head,
Yeah.
but know that I have the question and that we're going to dive into that. But this interview is approaching
Yes.
done. I'm so sad about it because this has been a terrific interview, Miguel. I just love hearing you talk. I love hearing you play. I'm loving getting to know you. This is like so dope to me. And so I have to ask for the audience, of course, not for my own personal pleasure, because that would just be. Would you be interested in playing a little bit of that there harmonica?
A little bit of I'll give them a taste.
Just a little bit of
Give 'em a
taste.
So the levels, yeah, we'll do.
What are you gonna play? Are you just gonna freestyle, or are you
We're gonna freestyle a little. For the trained ear, I'm gonna throw in something. They might catch it.
Okay.
But this is just a little bit of kind of what I've been messing around with these days. Let's see. Could keep going.
Woo! Y'all, I love that there harmonica. Like, I love that there guitar.
But yeah, that's a little piece of kind of what is clamoring around in my head. A lot of times, like when people just ask me to play something, I can there's like a couple songs I can just go to, but a lot of times I just like to freestyle it.
I love it. And I can't wait for your project to come out. I know it's going to be terrific.
And hopefully it'll live up to all this hype. You know? It's on wax now. It's on the mic. People know a project might be coming out, so now the pressure's there. But
yep, I got to produce it. Got to follow through. Got to see it through, my boy.
I hope so. I really do.
You will. So how can the people find you? That is so important. How can they keep up with your journey to your album?
The Instagram is really the best way. If I'm posting anything musically or whenever I do perform with some other bands, I usually post through there. So on my Instagram, it's Another Brother 87. The name will probably change at some point, but you can start following me there. Another Brother 87 on Instagram. And also look me up on LinkedIn. I know that I don't post as much musically there, but if you're trying to see what I do professionally in that world, definitely keep up with me there. Some of my work with the Stone Mountain Action Coalition, like I have some, they have a LinkedIn page and I used to post a lot there. And also if you're just curious of linking up with me professionally, like, oh, I didn't realize you did this or you worked with this university. Let's talk. So just look me up on LinkedIn, Miguel Santiago. You'll see, I guess the best way you'll find me, because there's probably a few Miguel Santiagos on there. But if you look up Miguel Santiago with Clark University, actually.
With your Clark hoodie.
Yep, you know how to do it. But
repping the HBCU. See, I knew my guy was the real deal.
So you got it.
Knew he was the real deal.
All day. But if you just Clark University, Miguel Santiago on LinkedIn, you can find me there and connect with me. Send me a message. But there or Instagram, that's how they find me. That's how the people can get me. And if you want to find me, you know how to find me. I'll be out here.
Y'all can find me and I'll find him because I tracked him down.
Yeah,
it's like here. I got to figure out who that was. It was so funny. You don't know this story, but like I don't think I got your contact the day of. So I like found you on YouTube and then I was like aggressively searching Instagram. And then I found you. So
today, that's the way it happens sometimes. That's how people are getting connected, which is great. And also that's like a big part of my research. When I do research, I'm digging. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, people be like, how do you tell someone you found them without sounding crazy, right? It's like, I tried. No, it was easy. I just went through like a million Google searches. And
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
it's
but I
fine.
found you.
We're right there.
But
We're right there.
well, I'm so glad though you did do that search, because we got connected. And even how I still think about how we got there. Like I had never been to an art protest like that.
Yeah.
You hadn't been. I didn't even know if I was performing. I don't know if I told you that.
No, you didn't.
I wasn't. I heard about it. I hit up the person who was organizing it like the day before and asked him like, hey, I noticed there's artists. Do I need to come? Like, can I come through and help out, set up? And I do play harmonica if you need me to play, but I thought there was already like a lineup.
Mm-hmm.
I was just there to help set up stuff.
Oh, wow.
And so I roll up there with my case. And then like, right when I get there, she said, oh, great, get up on stage and go do some harmonica. And I'm like, wait, you don't want me to like set up a table? Or I'll just go play with the kids over here, like helping them. They were like, their kids were doing drawings.
Yep.
I was like, I'll be right here. And I thought I was going to play harmonica for them at the very least. And then no, put me up on that microphone. And then that's the way it went down. And I wasn't even, it was crazy how I even came across that event, because I had just moved back to Atlanta. So I was trying to find all the artists again, because since I've left, I know all the artists I came up with, they've moved on, they're in different locations. So it's kind of like relearning the art scene again. And I figured once I saw this, when I saw the vigil and I was just like, I've never seen anything like this. And I'm like, this might be a good time to heal with some other artists and meet some new artists. And it's exactly what happened.
That's exactly what happened.
Exactly what happened.
So y'all will be hearing more from me and Miguel. Make sure you follow me at Ashlee Haze. Make sure you follow Modern Philosophy, the podcast on Modern Philosophy. Follow Philosophy Media Group. We produce Modern Philosophy, and this is really like a modern renaissance segment of Modern Philosophy, which you'll see a little more modern renaissance happening, but it's all art, all wisdom, all love, all philosophy. So thank you all so much for tuning into the Modern Philosophy podcast, where we are learning better, doing better, and being better. My name is Ashlee Haze. The song of the week is going to be Brand New by Sister. So make sure that you listen to that. Please remember to hydrate, moisturize, mind your business, wash your hands, wear your mask, and get your vaccines. And I'll see y'all next time.